Hi everyone, I'm Sal Tonge. I'm a storyteller and a musician and a collector of oral bric-a-brac. And I'm really glad to be here as part of the Folk Community Group's Kindful Cafe project, funded by the Communities Lottery Fund. Now, I had everything planned out for my third offering here, but if you go to a cafe, you might meet somebody and you might get into a conversation with somebody. And that person might change your ideas, might move your thoughts along a little bit. And in these times of isolation, that's a really precious thing. So I've changed my ideas and I'm responding today to Janie Mitchel's beautiful song about a hare. And I'd like to tell you a story set hereabouts in the Stipestones where I live, all about a hare. So, let's go. Once upon a time, there was a travelling tailor. Armed with his sewing machine, he would go from house to house. He had an annual round, taking in sheets, altering trousers, shortening dresses, letting out the jackets. He'd come to a village and he'd find a house, and there he'd set up at the kitchen table with maybe 2 or 3 days stitching and mending and altering to be done. And the wheel on his machine would go round and round, and that bright busy needle went up and down. The best house for him to come to was the house of a widow. For of course, her husband would have died and he would have left behind a big pile of jackets for mending, shirts for altering and trousers for taking in. There was always lots of good work in a widow's house. And then one day, by and by, his path brought him to a farmhouse of a wealthy widow. Her husband had not long died, and he knew there would be plenty of mending. And indeed, when he knocked on the door, she opened it wide and said, "Tailor, I've a pile of shirts and suits, trousers and jackets to be altered, for I want to give these to my nephews, to my cousins, and to the poor of the village." And so the tailor set to at the farmhouse table, stitching and mending. That night, after a simple meal, he slept on a shakedown mattress stuffed with sweet hay in front of the fire. His dreams were broken early, not by the sound of the birds, but by the sound of metal scraping on the slate floor of the kitchen. He just opened one eye and peered over the top of his blanket to see the woman sloosh and slosh 4 jugs of steaming water into an iron bath that she had dragged in from the back door. Then she whispered some words over the steaming water, and much to his delight, she unbuttoned her nightdress and let it fall around her ankles and stepped naked into the steaming water. Oh, thought the tailor, this is nice. But then, to his incredulity, all of a sudden, out of that bath jumped a hare, a bright-eyed, furry, strong hare, leaving 2 damp paw prints on the kitchen floor. Whoosh! It was gone, out of the back door and straight over the hill. The tailor couldn't believe his eyes. And he was just rubbing the sleep and the bewilderment when all of a sudden, with a whisk and a whoosh, the hare was back, jumped straight into the bath and out in the form of a woman. She dried herself off and put her dress on and tied her pinny around her waist, and then dragged the bath to the back door and slooshed the water away. The woman busied herself and got on with the breakfast. The tailor got up, and neither of them spoke a word about the strange goings-on that morning. And he worked another day, and he slept another night. A night of uneasy dreams was once again broken at first light by the scrape of the metal bath on the slate floor. The tailor peered again. Had he dreamt yesterday's events? But no. Sloosh and slosh, into the bath went the steaming water, and through the fronds of steam the woman whispered the magic words. Then, to his joy, she once again removed her nightie, jumped into the water, and out again sprang in the form of a hare. Eyes alive, ears twitching, feet powerful. And she ran out of the back door. In what seemed like only moments, she was back again. She jumped through the water and emerged in the shape of a pale-skinned woman. She dried herself off and put on her pinny for the day's work. She dragged that bath to the back door and swoshed the water away. And then got on with the rest of the day, as did the tailor, neither of them speaking a word. All that day, the tailor worked. The wheel on the machine went round and round, and the bright, busy needle went up and down. And the tailor's mind went round and round, and his bright imaginings confected all sorts of stories. What magic was afoot in this strange little house? So the next morning, he was ready. When he was awoken from his shakedown, from the sound of the metal bath on the slate floor, he was poised. The woman, she slooshed and sloshed the water, she whispered the incantations. She stripped off, she dipped in, and she chased out in the form of a hare. And the tailor followed. He threw back the blankets, he took off his clothes, and he jumped into the bath. And he jumped straight out, feeling his face prickle as fur grew from every place, feeling the muscles in his legs strengthen and a power begin to beat in his buttocks that made him ready to run. And he was off, chasing, running, feeling a power surging in him like he had never felt before, a strength pushing through his back feet, his front paws hungrily grasping for the next step. His whiskers twitched, his ears were tore, and he ran, and he ran, and he ran. He didn't know where he was going, but his legs seemed to know. His nose seemed to point him in the right direction, and on, and on, and on he ran. With his heart beating in his chest, he ran to the top of a hill, into a meadow of long wild grasses, studded with buttercups, heavy with dew, and far away from any houses. As he looked and gathered his breath, he noticed he was not alone. For there, in the meadow with him, were hundreds and hundreds of other bright, beady-eyed, alert, breathless, dew-soaked hares, peeping up above the long grass, sniffing the early morning air. One of the hares stood up in the middle of the circle. She lifted her chin and she looked this way and that, and then said in a language that the tailor completely understood, "Sisters, we are not alone. There is another amongst us. Begone." And at once all those hundreds of hares skittered and scattered and ran and disappeared through thickets, through brambles, through the long grass, through little holes in the fence, and disappeared. I must be gone too, thought the tailor, and following the channel in the long grass that his slender, powerful body had made, he ran for home, twisting and turning, enjoying that power that he felt surging through his muscles. He scampered and sprinted all the way back to the door of the farmhouse. Just in time, there was the woman, dressed with her apron on, dragging the bath to the back door and heaving that bath water with a sploosh out of the door. The tailor, in the form of the hare, just managed to jump in front of the shower of water as she was discarding it, and it soaked him. He felt the power recede in his thighs. He felt his chest stop thudding, and he felt the fur melt away, and his nose soften, and his ears shrink, and his form changed. And there he was, naked and shivering, exposed in front of the woman. He felt relieved to have caught the magic water so that he could return to his human form. But when he tried to speak, when he tried to apologise, his tongue was stuck to the roof of his mouth, and the power of the speech left him. The woman looked at him, and she spoke. "You can't stay here. You know too much. I will pay you, tailor, and you can be on your way. And you will never speak of these happenings because you won't be able to." Clutching his machine and with a pocket full of wages, the tailor made his way on to the next village. Unable to speak, all he could do was hold the sewing machine up, but people had been waiting for him. They had clothes to alter. They had dresses to shorten and jackets to let out. And a woman took him in to her farmhouse, set him up at the kitchen table and put a basket full of mending in front of him. And the tailor set to work. And the wheel on the machine went round and round, and the bright, busy needle went up and down. In the house was a little girl. Oh, she was fascinated by the tailor's sewing machine. She'd never seen something so magnificent, with the wheel going round and round and the bright busy needle going up and down, and how the tailor's nimble fingers worked, and he was so mysterious and silent. She would creep up and she would watch him, and the tailor would feel her breath going down the back of his neck as she peered over his shoulder at every move. And then one day she leaned in real close. He could feel the warmth of her breath on his ear. And she reached a hand forward and she stroked the back of the tailor's neck, and she said, "Why do you have a strip of fur down the back of your neck?" And the tailor dropped his scissors, and he too put his hand up to his neck, and he felt. And sure enough, where the drops of water had not touched the very middle of his back, there remained a long strip of hare's pelt, which he wore silently for the rest of his days. The wheel on the machine goes round and round. The bright, busy needle goes up and down.